Welcome to In the Lab with Hoopsology, back at you with another episode. I am Matt Thomas, joined as always by my good friend and co-host Justin Goodrum. Justin, how you doing?
Doing really well. I'm excited for the playoffs. How about yourself?
Yeah, likewise. It always comes up so quickly, and we have, for our purposes, like this really short window where we can get our picks in at the last second before the playoffs start, especially now with the play-in tournament. But everything is set now. Those playing games happened. My condolences to your Bulls, Justin. They had
Yeah.
a good run. They gave themselves a chance to get in the postseason. There didn't happen, but we have our 1 through 8 seeds locked in for each of the conferences. And our goal today is to get through these series, give you guys our picks and kind of some keys to the series, why we're picking what we're picking. And before we get started to that, just wanted to give a shout out to all the new listeners, subscribers on all our platforms, YouTube, the podcast, anywhere you're listening to podcasts, and on social media. We've seen another great month of growth. So really appreciate you all supporting the show. But now it's time to get into this. So I mentioned we have our bracket set. I'll pull that up on the video side. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you can sort of make out in this small print what's going on here in the series. And Justin, if it's okay with you, I want to start out west, breaking down that conference first. And in the 1-8 seed, we've got Denver versus Minnesota. Minnesota knocked out the Oklahoma City Thunder. Unfortunately, I was really pulling for the Thunder to get in there, but they knocked them out in the playoff tournament, play-in tournament yesterday. And so we have this as our 1-8 matchup. And I'll throw it to you first. Who are you picking in this series? Are you bold enough to take the Denver slump upset, or where are you going with this?
No, not at all. And you'll see later. They are a huge pick of mine, but I won't spoil it. But at least for this first round, pretty easy to say that the Timberwolves have had a lot of turmoil as of late, a lot of injuries. If you just separate what happened with the altercation with Rudy Gobert, he's dealing with injuries anyways. So I think it's going to be a clear victory for the Denver Nuggets. Let me just pull up my. I do think so. In this series, I have given them the Timberwolves a little bit of respect. I picked Denver in 6. I just feel like sometimes Denver goes through a lot of trouble in the playoffs in terms of getting their groove. They don't seem like a favorite sometimes. And I think this might be a series where it gets some trouble. But if Rudy Gobert is out for, more than a game or two, I think they have a chance for the sweep. But if Gobert is in there, or Carl Anthony Towns is in there, it depends on health. If the Timberwolves are decently healthy, I could see it going 6. That's what I picked. But regardless, I see the Nuggets moving on. How about you?
We see eye to eye on this. I also picked Denver in 6.
Oh, wow.
One thing I wanted to mention was we had some epic battles back when the Jazz had Rudy Gobert. There were some epic playoff games and regular season games between the Nuggets and Jazz. So you're getting a renewal of this Gobert Jokic, if you can even call it much of a rivalry. We're renewing that, so that could be fun. Of course, Donovan Mitchell was also big in in those series, but yeah, I think I picked Nuggets in 6, just kind of because I think the Wolves early on could give them some trouble with their athleticism, particularly with Anthony Edwards. But I do think the Nuggets are just the better overall team. And of course, they've got the best player in the series. And I do think they're better coached as well. So there may be a little bit of rust with Denver still, but this is a good team to warm up against. And I really don't see the Timberwolves as a threat to win the series and upset them like everyone was kind of wondering if the Nuggets might pull, a 2000s Dallas Mavericks and lose like that 1-8 against the Warriors like they did. So let's move forward since we have agreement on that, and we'll go into the 2-7 series, which I think this one might be more controversial. We'll see. You already know what I picked. We had a little back and forth in our group chat about this series when we were talking about playoff picks, but we've got the Memphis Grizzlies and the 2 seed versus the Los Angeles Lakers, the revived, back from the dead Los Angeles Lakers. Started the season 2-10, had something like a 0.3% chance of making the playoffs, and they did it. They battled through. Credit to them, especially after the trade deadline. I believe they went 19-8 and secured their postseason spot. I'll go ahead and lead with this one since you led with the last one. I am not buying into the Lakers hype. There are some folks that are picking the Lakers, and I know Vegas also has the Lakers fairly high given their seed as odds to get to the Western Conference Finals and maybe even be the Western Conference representative in the NBA Finals. But I don't see it going that way. I think Memphis's coaching is better. I think their athleticism is better. I know they have injuries to Brandon Clark and Steven Adams, but I still like the Grizzlies, and I picked them in 6. How do you see this series breaking down?
I concur with you. I think this is going to be very boring.
Mm,
I picked the Memphis
interesting.
Grizzlies in 6. I don't see it with the Lakers. There was a chance for them to change my mind when they played the Timberwolves in the playing game if they had a dominant victory, but that game went into overtime and the Lakers were healthy. The Timberwolves were they're in disarray right now. Like they barely won that game. So I don't understand how you can then pick them over a Memphis Grizzlies team unless something bizarre happens with John Moran. Then all bets are off. But like you said, I just don't see the Lakers as this upset. I get it; they have the stars, and I think we'll get to it later with the Golden State Warriors. I feel my bias is with them, not with the Lakers. So I get it why people are picking Los Angeles to have a prolonged run compared to what the expectations were. But like yourself, I don't see it.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you bring that up because people are freaking out about the Lakers getting an overtime win, and that was the game where Rudy Gobert was suspended.
Yeah,
They didn't even have Rudy Gobert.
right.
It's just like if you're not making easy work of them, I don't know. I just don't see it. Also, friend of the show, guest of the show, Seth Partnow. I don't know if you saw this, but he was talking about LeBron's sort of declining efficiency and declining free throw rate. That's another big reason why I'm picking the Grizzlies here is because if they can relegate LeBron to a jump shooter, he's only shooting, I believe it's 30.9% from 3-point range this season, which is his lowest since like 2015, 2016. And if if he is relegated to a jump shooter, that's transition baskets for the Grizzlies, who are very good at running the court. And I think they can run fast enough that they can tire the Lakers out. I don't think the Lakers are, even though they were a fast-paced team to start the season, we saw that that didn't really serve them well record-wise. That's when things were a catastrophe there. So anyway, we agree on that. Interesting. It's always weird kind of picking against guys who have had so much success in the past, with LeBron and certainly AD to an extent. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't trust them. Let's go to, speaking of, you brought up the Warriors. That's who I want to talk about next. The Kings, the darlings of the Western Conference playoffs to many, get the unfortunate draw of the defending champion Golden State Warriors. So we have Kings in the 3 seed. They'll have home court at least, but they're going against the Golden State Warriors. But I guess that's a fair point to bring up is that the Warriors have been terrible on the road this season. Um, Especially for this core of players, they've been especially bad. Been a tumultuous season for the Warriors. Obviously, started with Draymond punching Jordan Poole, that whole controversy, and it's been kind of up and down. But much like the Lakers got their stuff together, the Warriors got their stuff together as well. I'll throw it to you first for this one, Justin. How do you see this? Who are you picking in this series?
I'm picking Golden State. I think this series comes down to really both teams. I don't know if you would call it Achilles' heels, but two X factors. One, how the Kings are going to perform in the playoffs. And like you said, how the Golden State Warriors are going to perform on the road. It's tough. I picked the Warriors in 7. I think it's going to be a long, dragged out series. But to me, when it comes down to a series that's really close, I go with the team with the most proven superstars, and that's the Golden State Warriors. I think the Kings in this environment, I think they're unproven, and I'd rather be wrong than to pick them. To be honest, I know that's a weird logic, but until they prove me otherwise, I just can't pick the Kings over the Warriors, even though the Warriors struggle on the road. Everything's against them, but again, I think the Warriors are at full strength. Anything could happen in the playoffs. It's just a different pressure. It's just different. We've seen teams crack under that too. That is a factor. So I think this would be a good learning experience for the Kings. Disappointing, but nevertheless, I think this will benefit them in the long term.
How many games do you see it going?
Oh, it's seven, seven. Yeah,
7, right on.
Golden State in seven. Yep.
So Warriors winning on the road in 7. I agree with you as well. I have the Warriors in 6, and to me it's just a matter that Steph Curry is healthy, and I think that's a real threat. The Kings are also not a good defensive team, so I think it's just bad from a matchup perspective. I think the Warriors are a little bit better defensively than the Kings. I think coaching may be about even this season with I mean, you got to give respect to what Mike Brown has done, but also Mike Brown was an assistant under the Warriors. So that's kind of an interesting fold with this. Maybe he's got some secrets. He's got the lowdown on the Warriors and he'll be able to surprise us, but I don't see that happening. And I'm with you. I think it's going to be a heartbreaking experience in Sacramento. I just can't pick them over the Warriors. And I'm not even all that high on the Warriors overall. I do think there's a big chance that they lose in the second round. I think this is a year that they're they're getting a little bit worn down. I don't see them pushing through the Western Conference, but there we have it. So I've got Warriors in 6. Justin's got Warriors in 7. Let's move on to our last series in the first round, the last matchup here. The number 4 Suns versus the number 5 Clippers. Unfortunately, we don't get Paul George in this series. That's kind of the big to do about this, the big headline right now. And because of that, I mean, I'm giving Kawhi the respect of one game. I've never been a big believer in the Clippers anyway, just because can't really trust the health of the star players and the roster overall. It's just throughout the season. I mean, we've talked about it with guests over and over again. I mean, this is just a rotating cast of players, and I think Ty Lue is a great coach. I certainly buy into that. But when you don't have availability, uh, it's chaos, and, and I feel for him in having to deal with that all season. And I know it's been frustrating for Kawhi, even some of the load management things. It's not like he's trying to duck out of games. They have Kawhi for the series, so I'll give them one game, but that leads to Phoenix in 5 for me. I see a pretty dominant showing from the Suns, and that's honestly it. I mean, I think this Suns team is loaded. They are the Vegas favorites to represent the West in the finals. And as long as their star core, their their big 4 of players are healthy, then I have to kind of subscribe to that for the time being, and we'll see how that changes. How do you see this series going?
Yeah, this was a weird series because I think I knew where I was going to go in terms of the winner, but not how many games. And ultimately, I just think the Suns have been inconsistent. But I'm picking them in 7. I get what you said. I co-sign everything that you said, but I think that the Suns they are inconsistent. We'll see with Durant, but I think you're right. Ultimately, I think it's going to be too much for the Clippers to handle. And I think with Kawhi Leonard, I just think with the Clippers, they're always dangerous, and I think that's why they're going to push them to 7 games. But ultimately, I do see the Suns prevailing and moving on. But I do think this series is going to take a bit out of them. So we'll see. This is a very important series for the Suns, I think, to kind of take care of business and move on and not just linger for 6 or 7 games. I think it's going to really benefit them for the kind of to handle the Clippers pretty quickly. I think if it goes longer, it's probably going to be a detriment towards the later rounds.
And by inconsistent, do you mean just like their past playoffs and those kinds of things? Because I mean, I think they haven't lost a game since they got KD. I mean, if they have
I
KD
guess
playing, they haven't lost yet.
Yeah, good clarification. I think it just comes down to just some of their past playoff history. I think in terms of last year, how things unfolded. I think, of course, with Chris Paul, his injuries, we all know, going back to Houston, where what happens with him, the wear and tear on his body, and how important he is to a team. So I guess that's what I mean is the inconsistency in the playoffs, not necessarily like the streak heading into it.
That makes
Thank you for
sense.
clarifying. But yeah, I think that's a genuine concern of mine, at least in terms of how things are going to play off. However, when you have Kevin Durant, that is a great equalizer, even if Chris Paul does get hurt. So
Yeah,
that's a
for
great
sure.
pickup for them. Yeah,
No, I think that's a good point and well said. I mean, Chris Paul definitely gives the most concern about that team, like moving forward in the playoffs. So you're 100% right. I mean, if they can get out of that series very quickly, because then in round two, based on our picks, they would play the Nuggets, and that honestly should have been like a Western Conference Finals type of matchup. But we'll get it in the second round. I mean, arguably, of course, depending on how you see the playoffs unfolding. But um, let's look at the Eastern Conference now. We're making good time buzzing through these. And I want to look at that 1-8 seed. Um, I think this one's pretty simple. Milwaukee versus the Miami Heat in that 1 versus 8. The Bucks are, I would argue, the best team in the NBA. They have more depth than the Suns, and yes, there's been a little bit of up and down in terms of their win loss, but I don't think there's anything serious you can take from that, especially not moving into a first round matchup with the Heat, who have been wildly inconsistent, kind of clawed their way into this 8 seed. Justin, I know you're going to be rooting for the Bucks to take out the Heat quickly because of what they did to the Bulls, or maybe not. But how do you see this unfolding? How many games do you have the Bucks winning in?
yeah. I see the Bucks in five. I don't. I think
Yeah,
with the Bulls, just to put a bow on it, like that was their note outcome. I think if they were to beat the Heat, it's just like, what are we doing? Like you're going to get destroyed by the Bucks. Like what just I think that the outcome that happened with the Bulls losing to the Heat, I think that's the best case scenario. I think unfortunately, just with their roster, I just don't see how much improvement they can make until Alonzo Ball comes back. I don't know when that's going to happen, but nevertheless, in terms of the series, I just do see the Bucks just handling the Heat. The Heat, to me, weren't that impressive against Chicago. They weren't that impressive this entire season, especially for being, I think, the 1 seed last year, or at least we know being very close to going to the NBA Finals, just due to what happened with Jimmy Butler. So I just don't see how the Heat have any type of a chance in this series at all, other than maybe just a Butler just 40-point explosion if they get one game.
yeah, definitely keep your eyes on the Heat as a Luca destination potentially,
Yeah.
because I think next season they're going to make sure that they have the cap room in place. I don't know if they'll do anything big this offseason, but they're going to be prepping for that. I'm with you. I had Bucks in 5 as well. Giannis is incredible. That's a great team. I mean, I don't think there's much more to say. Let's look at the next matchup in the Eastern Conference, and that is Boston versus the Atlanta Hawks. This one may be my most disrespectful pick of the postseason, so I'll go ahead and just come out with it. I think the Celtics are going to dominate the Hawks. I think they know all they need to do is make sure Trey Young doesn't let his teammates get off. And I think you just let Trey Young do just about whatever he wants to do. I mean, if Trey Young is shooting 30 times a game, I'm cool with that. If I'm Celtics, I'm just trying not to let them get other players on fire for that. But I've got the Celtics in 4. This is the only series that I picked as a sweep here. I even gave the Heat the gentleman's sweep of getting one win. But I don't know. I just see this as a really bad matchup for Atlanta. I don't think they have answers for Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. Uh, so I think we're going to see this end pretty quickly. I mean, maybe if the Celtics relax, that's where I could see the Hawks winning the game. But matchup wise, Not sold on it at all. Even though I do think Quinn Snyder is a great get for Atlanta as a coach, I just don't think they have the pieces to work with to challenge the Celtics. How do you see the series going down?
Yeah, I concur. I see the Celtics winning in 4 games. Lots of turmoil with the Hawks. Rumors of Trey Young, trade rumors. Just lots of turmoil. We've had Pat Benson on. He said it was like a pure disaster. Give credit to this team. I mean, a lot of other teams would have just folded, given up. I mean, look at the Dallas Mavericks, right? I
True,
mean, we've referenced
true.
them a bunch, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So give credit to the Hawks. They fought, and at least they're competitive. I mean, through all
That's true.
the turmoil, I mean, I would say the Mavericks, they have 2 of the best players in the league. And the Hawks, I mean, they're pretty underrated with the roster despite the turmoil, but still, I mean, we have Kyrie and Luca. Um, but again, in saying that, I think the Celtics too strong, too experienced, too much depth, and it'll be a miracle if they win 1 game. And it might have a chance with Trey Young. You never know if he goes for 60. Who knows? But I agree with you. I don't see. I see Boston in 4.
All right, so Atlanta, if you guys win in game 3, you make sure you storm the court.
Right.
It's a miracle. um, yeah, yeah, you and I are on the same page there, and I do think that is interesting. I don't know where you would move Trey Young, and honestly, I don't know what you would get him for, but I would be in favor of trading him if I were an Atlanta fan, or you got to make something big happen because I don't think he can be your number one star um, if you want to have hopes at a title. But let's move forward. We can talk about more. We can talk about Trey Young more at a future date. Um, let's look at our 3 versus 6 series in the East. The Philadelphia 76ers, another team that I feel kind of like the Clippers. I feel like I've never gotten too high on this team in terms of postseason. I'm probably the highest on them now than I've ever been, just because of the consistent play from Joel Embiid. I do believe he's going to win MVP, and he's certainly deserving based on his performance. We have 3 guys in this league that are deserving of MVP this season, and I think Embiid's going to get it. Against the Brooklyn Nets, they have had some great play from Mikal Bridges of late. He's I don't know. I guess there is like an argument as to whether it's one of those cases where, well, somebody has to score, or is this guy a standout? But when you're getting like 40-point games on a regular basis, I think there's a case that he's got some star potential moving forward. We'll see what happens. Justin, why don't you go ahead and lead us on this one? How do you see this going down?
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm pretty much dismissing Brooklyn in this series. I do give them some respect in, in terms of winning 1 game. I picked Philly in 5. I think what's interesting is that I interviewed Mike Sealski of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And you'll hear that interview a little bit later. We talked about Kobe's legacy, but we also talked about a lot about the Sixers. And he surprised me with the expectations of this team, especially Philly being a hardcore fan base. He said that expectations were kind of low. That it wasn't like a championship
Huh.
or bust situation. So I think this is going to be a series where we can really gauge how much of a favorite the Sixers are. If they struggle against this Brooklyn team, I think that's pretty indicative of what we can expect the rest of the playoffs. And if they destroy them, I think that really improves their resume of their regular season and their expectations moving forward as a for favorite to win it all. So I think this is a very important series to watch because really Brooklyn has nothing to play for. Their roster is decimated due to trades. They're in a rebuilding phase, and this is kind of all gravy here in terms of their success. So evaluating talent for the future. This is an important series for the Sixers to make a statement. So, and I do think they're going to make that statement with Embiid as long as he stays healthy. I think that's the biggest question: is wear and tear on his body. And I think you and I know he wants it. I think he has a desire not only to be the MVP but to win the championship. And ultimately, this is a series that to intimidate the other teams based on this series for Embiid. So I know he doesn't mind doing that. So that's what I expect, and that's why I picked the Sixers in 5.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I have the Sixers winning in 6. I don't know. There's just something I just see the Nets like kind of being this sort of frisky team. I don't give them any serious chance of winning the series. I think that would be an absolute disaster in Philadelphia, certainly if that happened. And nobody's expecting anything from the Nets. I, I don't know. I just see their wing play maybe getting out of control and scoring to a great degree in two of those games. But I'm with you. I think the Sixers will still look dominant. I guess another reason I'm just kind of hesitant still about Doc Rivers in the postseason, but certainly they should get past this first round. And the Sixers have been very good this year. So to Doc Rivers credit as well. They've been very, very steadily at the top of the Eastern Conference. And yeah, I expect them to go pretty deep in the playoffs. So we're on the same page with this matchup. Now, our last matchup in the first round, and maybe honestly the most intriguing, most entertaining one, we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers at the 4 seed versus the Knicks at the 5 seed, a series that we talked about a long time ago. And many of our guests as sort of a wish list kind of round one series, and it happened. It came true. The Knicks got to that 5 seed. They leapfrogged the Brooklyn Nets as expected, and Cleveland was kind of locked into that 4 seed a while back. So we get this great matchup. Donovan Mitchell has been on the short list of MVP candidates. I think outside of that top three, he's probably number 4 for many people, based on how he has impacted that team coming to them after this offseason, as you all remember. I think this series is going to be close, and I think I just like Cleveland's starters a little bit better than the Knicks. I think the Knicks may actually be better defensively. I just don't think they have as much firepower offensively. And defense matters a little bit more in the playoffs compared to the regular season, at least historically. Even in the modern era, you get away with a little bit more contact. That benefits the Knicks. I would probably, if this were like regular season circumstances, I'd probably pick Cleveland in 6. But because this is the postseason, and because I think there's going to be all this energy around the Knicks, I think it's not like a conspiracy type of thing I'm talking, but I do think there is sort of like a momentum that you can feel in the series where the refs are kind of like, well, we're not going to call that type of contact a foul in this series. I think that stuff benefits the Knicks. So, long story short, I've got Cleveland still winning, but I think it's going to take 7 games. How do you see this going down, Justin? Are you bold enough to pick the Knicks over the Cavaliers?
I'm not. This is very boring because I agree with you. I think this could be a close series. You pretty much summed up what I was going to say. The only thing I would add is, Julius Randle's health. He
Mm,
is the linchpin of this team, and he's been
for sure.
questionable in terms of, the injuries he's been battling. So that's where I'm hesitant. But at the same time, it's Madison Square Garden. There's magic there. That is arguably the best home court. I don't know. It's just comes kind of magic mojo that I think if you're not a basketball fan, you kind of don't understand that compared to the other teams in the league. So I think that's a factor in this series, but I think Cleveland's going to be too much, and I don't think Julius Randle's going to hold up through this series. But could be wrong. I think it's going to be. I agree with you, Matt. Really, besides this one, and then the Kings and the Warriors are my two most look forward to series.
Right on. All right. We are coming to the end here. We have gotten through all our first round series. I want to kind of leapfrog, let's not go into second round analysis or conference final analysis till that stuff finalizes and materializes. But based on preseason predictions, I believe I had Nuggets versus Bucks. I know for sure I was very high on the Bucks. I had Giannis as my MVP at the start of the season. I'm gonna definitely hold to my Bucks prediction, and I'm gonna hold to my Nuggets prediction. I do think if the Suns are healthy, they'll beat the Nuggets. So,
Hmm.
you know, I guess it kind of depends. My prediction relies on the Suns not being consistent, what you mentioned earlier with your consistency concerns with them. But I'm going to go ahead and stick with my pick, Nuggets versus Bucks. Who do you see, doesn't have to be based on preseason or whatever, who do you see making it to the finals just from this starting point and from what we've seen this season?
Again, we're boring because I agree with you. I have Nuggets and Bucks. I just think they're the two best teams in the NBA. I do think the Nuggets will break through this year, but I have the Bucks winning, in the NBA Finals. I just don't see that changing. But I think this is a rite of passage for Jokic. I think this is a year in a playoff series run where they have to go to the NBA Finals, or what else are they? I think there'll be some serious questions with the Joker there. And facing Giannis, I think it's the first time in the NBA Finals I'm willing to give the Nuggets as a complete franchise kind of the benefit of the doubt. That is very intimidating to play into the finals. Is different, and with the Bucks having that experience, especially with Giannis, I don't see them overcoming that. That's why I picked the Bucks.
Yeah, yeah, I see that playing the same way. What do you think about my take on the healthy Suns? Do you think the Nuggets can take them straight up? Sounds like you have maybe a little more confidence in that than I do.
I do, but I think it's a toss up. I mean, that's always a huge rivalry, but I just think the Suns, I know with Kevin Durant being there, that is a huge X factor. I think that changes everything. And I think that poises them to, in my mind, it would be an upset for them to beat the Nuggets. However, I have concerns based on the Suns' previous history. But Kevin Durant being there is a whole, it's a massive X factor. So I do do concur that if the Suns are able to meet them, that they are poised for that upset for sure. But I think I've still picked the Nuggets. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Suns were to pull that off.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see play out, and like we mentioned earlier, we might get that. Well, we will get that in the second round if things go by paper, how they should go. So that will be uh, maybe the most pivotal matchup in the Western Conference going down in the second round. So for Justin Goodrum, I'm Matt Thomas. This has been another episode of In the Lab with Hoopsology. Let us know your guys' predictions, your guys' thoughts. Where are we off? Do you guys think, hey, Lakers fans, get at us? I mean, do you guys think Lakers are beating Memphis straight up? Um, but we appreciate you listening. We appreciate your support as always. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
See you later.